Okay, I think I'm ready. Let's see. Oh, maybe we turn it down a little bit, just a hair. That sounds about right. Yeah, maybe a little louder. Hold on. Sure, something like that. Okay. So, welcome back to an Extra Holiday stream. It's me, Extra Holiday. Hi. If you didn't know, I play a little bit of HoloCure. I might have close to 200 hours on Steam, and that's not even counting that the amount that I played before there was even a Steam version of this game. So, you know, like, there are people with more experience in HoloCure than me, but, like, probably not a ton. Anyway, the point of this here stream is I've been noticing a lot of people getting into HoloCure lately. A lot of people who don't necessarily know anything about Hololive, but, you know, just heard that it's a good game, which it is. And a lot of people seem to have been enjoying it. So, in an effort to help those sorts of people, I wanted to make a tier list of characters that I think it is easiest to start with in the game. Because I have noticed occasionally new players will pick certain characters and won't do so well against them because the game does not pull its punches in the earlier stages before you've unlocked everything. So, I mean, even after you've unlocked everything, if you're playing like the hard mode versions of the stage. Also, I should probably mention, I'm recording this literally the day of an update, you know, a big update. So, recording slash streaming, you know what it is. So there's entirely a possibility that everything I say in this stream will be entirely invalid as soon as tonight. So, with that out of the way, why don't we get started? I don't know. I found this tier list maker on Tier Maker, and I don't know what order these characters are meant to be in, but we'll just go in the order they are here. So, Mori Calliope, the Rapping Reaper. Interestingly, I feel like Callie is one of those characters that is very attractive to newcomers. I mean, not just physically, because, you know, she is, you know, this is a good-looking model. All right. I'm talking about her actual model in-game pixel art. It's also very cute, but it's not like, you know what I mean. Anyway, point is, a lot of people will like Callie as one of their first characters, and Callie gets a bonus here for being one of the first characters that is unlocked at the start. The first 5 being, you know, the members of Myth. Mori Calliope, Ninomaya Inanis, Takanashi Kiara, why can't I think of them right now? Gargura, and Amelia Watson. So, I would say, aside from Ame, Callie is probably one of the most popular starter picks for people. And I think Callie is pretty good as just as a starter. Her main attack, oh, I meant to pull up the wiki while I was doing this so I could get a more organized way to talk about things. Actually, you know what? Maybe it would be better if I just did it on my phone, because having to look, there's a phone that I have to look around to look at my computer right now. It's whatever. I'll do it on the other phone. Okay. So, let me pull up the HoloGear wiki here. And, I mean, yes, I do know a lot about these characters just by heart, by, you know, having so many hours in the game, but HoloGear fandom wiki, thank you. But I want to make sure that I don't forget anything, so characters. Yes, we'll start with N Myth. Go. Go. Phone, will you please go? Hello? Phone? Characters. What frickin' ads? Okay. Okay, characters. Right, loadout, starting weapon, skills, thank you. Can I just get the list of characters, please? And get this ad out of my face, please. I'm sorry, Best Buy, I am not in the market for your Black Friday deals. Also, it's not even Black Friday yet. Okay, Mori Calliope. Oh my god. Ads! Okay, so our main weapon, Scythe Swing, is big. It's big, and that, I think, is pretty good. I mean, particularly if you're not used to aiming in this game, I know a lot of people come to this game from stuff like Vampire Survivors, where it's a little different from what I understand. I actually haven't played Vampire Survivors yet, but from what I understand, there's no real aiming. It's just kind of like whatever direction you're moving is where you're facing and where your attacks are aimed. The nice thing about Callie is because her main weapon is so large, it gives you a chance to get used to the aiming in HoloGear, which is different. You can actually like use the mouse to aim, or you can, if you're using a controller, you can play twin stick. It's pretty neat, actually. So our main weapon's pretty good. And the other thing I think is pretty good about Callie is that she functions pretty darn well without any specific items. So let me just put the cursor over her to note that we're talking about her. Is it not showing on stream? My cursor isn't showing on stream, is it? Hold on. Oh, maybe it's because I don't have it focused. That's probably why. Yeah, okay. So Callie. Yeah. Like, her kit has a lot of damage in it, and you can pretty much get away with just the scythe and weapons, and then the items you can just kind of build whatever for the most part. For the earlier stages, anyway. I will say her best build, in my opinion, is Haste, which isn't really a build that you can do super early because you don't have most of the haste items unlocked. Of the 3 haste items in the game, only one of them is unlocked at the start. So, Callie does lose a little bit on this list because of that. But I think overall she is pretty good. Her skills just give her like lots of damage. I would say one downside to her is that she doesn't necessarily have a lot of defensive skills or anything. In fact, pretty much none at all. But a lot of things that newer players tend to do, and is actually pretty easy to do because you don't really get the offensive items till you unlock them later, for the most part, is that newer players tend to build a lot more defensively. And so for that kind of makes it up for Callie's lack of defense. So with that, I will put Callie in the A tier because she's pretty good. She could be better. I would say if she had her own defensive tool, then you really could just build anything. And if you could build... crit is another solid build on her too. But yeah, crit and haste builds aren't very easy to do at the start, so... okay, Roboco. Roboco, one of my favorite characters in this game, actually. However, the thing about Roboco is she really wants experience. She gets bonuses for basically every time she levels up. She deals damage around her for a while, and she will also... I think she also gains weapon damage. Hold on, let me pull her up here. Roboco-san. Let's see. Let me just double check, make sure I'm not spouting falsehoods. Oh, I forgot to mention Callie's special. Pretty simple to use. It's just a buff mostly, which is also a benefit for newer players. Okay, so yeah, Roboco gets extra experience, which is nice pretty much no matter the skill level, and stuns enemies around her when she picks up batteries, which is pretty good for as a minor defensive thing. Yeah, so for each level she gains attack and crit. Well, crit for every 10 levels. The unfortunate thing when it comes to beginners is that, again, you don't really get the experience items until later, typically. So it's unfortunate, but Roboco is her best build and her most obvious build, I should say as well, is not really viable, I should say, at the start. I will say, because of her special, and this is something to consider as well, your first run you're not going to have a special, but if you do on your second or third or fourth run, you get your special. Her special gives her basically all stats, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me double check that. Short discharge for damage. Yeah, 100% in basically all stats, except 50% in crit and haste. So, Roboco is another one where you could probably get away with building just about anything, but I think experience is a lot more core to her build than haste or crit is to Callie's. So Roboco, I think, is going in B tier. Okay. The one and only Inugami Korone. So Korone, I think, is an interesting character. Firstly, if you're doing your first... Well, I mean, you can't do your first run as Korone because... Well, I guess... Basically, what I'm trying to say here is, without her special, Korone is actually kinda hard to use. Mostly because she kind of has the opposite problem that Callie has, where pretty much all of Korone's skills are defensive. She doesn't have a lot of damage except for the Yubis that she collects. Or Yubi, I guess, is the plural of Yubi. So aside from the Yubi that she collects, she really doesn't have a whole lot of offensive power. I mean, there's also her retaliation skill, which is... it's a little counterintuitive for a new player, I think, because it requires that you get hit. So it'd be pretty easy to misuse. And yeah, it's really... Ultimately, it just comes down to the fact that it's really hard to keep your stacks of Yubi up when you don't have upgrades. In fact, even at the point that I'm at, where, oh, I forgot to mention, I have all the upgrades in this game, and I have every achievement. So, as of this patch, anyway. But even at the point that I'm at, it can be hard for me to keep all the stacks of Yubi's all the time. And without them, her damage suffers quite a bit. So, I'm gonna say she is probably going in C tier. As much as I love Korone, in this game, she is not great for new players. Okay, Hakos Bales. Hakos Bales, unfortunately, might be the worst one for beginner players so far. Her builds are pretty much, very much reliant on either crit or haste. Mostly crit, but also kind of haste. And as mentioned before with Callie, you don't really get those items early on. She also doesn't really have any defensive tools. I mean, she has her on-hit ability that turns the enemy upside down and makes it so they can't move. But that's kind of it. You can kind of get away with running her as a as with like Body Pillow and Sake at the start. But again, that kind of requires that you already kind of know what you're doing. So I think Bae is probably actually in the D tier. As far as starting out with her. Similarly, I think Shirakami Fubuki is not great for beginner players, mostly because her optimal playstyle does not really jive with with how most people will want to play the game. Basically, the idea with Fubuki is you want to build damage avoidance, so things like Body Pillow and Breastplate, because she gets dodge chance. And the idea is basically you hit your special, or you wait for your friend zone bonus or buff to come up, and then you just run through the enemy and you'll mow them down, because whenever you dodge, you make a explosion around you that does damage. It's not exactly like a lot of newer players, a lot of beginners aren't going to catch on to that idea. Not to mention some of the items mentioned, like Breastplate, aren't available from the start. Additionally, the next best type of item on Fubuki is haste items. And again, haste items don't really show up at the beginning of the game because you have to unlock them. I don't know that Fubuki is quite as bad as Bae, largely because, you know, her dodge abilities can just kind of function as as just kind of a safety net for newer players who are more likely to get hit more often, even when they're not trying to. So it's honestly not as bad. And I forgot to mention, the other thing that Fubuki likes to build is speed, which is another thing that isn't really available at the start. So yeah, I would put her, I would probably, I'd probably put her in C tier, next to Korone. For kind of similar reasons. Just because they both kind of lack damage without proper items and upgrades. Who do we got here? Okay, I believe that is Azuki. Okay, So I heard that Azuki is getting reworked in this upcoming patch. So basically, if anything I say is going to be outdated, it's probably with this character. Let me just double check where Azuki. Okay. Let me just double check her abilities to make sure I remember them, because the thing about Azuki is she's kind of pretty basic. That's the best way to put it, I think, is she doesn't really have a whole lot special going on for her. Her skills are more or less, like, she's got one that just does damage around her. She has one that, you keep moving and you get buffs, which is good. I think it's particularly good for newer players because because it teaches, you to be always moving, which I think is a good habit to have in this game in particular. And then she's got one where she gets buffs for not taking damage. So really, there's not a whole... Azuki, I would say, is one of my less favorite characters in this game. Just because she isn't all that interesting to build or play, really. Her main weapon is pretty simple. It's just a projectile that, at max level will split into other projectiles, which means that, she does kind of want haste because it is an on-hit effect there. But I think, actually, the fact that she is so simple and she pretty much teaches you through her skills how generally you should play the game, I think that makes her pretty good as a beginner character. I think she actually is one of the better beginner characters. In fact, I would argue potentially the best. So Azuki is going in S tier. Now, Ninomaya Inanis, who, despite me kind of butchering her name there, might just happen to be my Oshi. Lavina, both in-game and out. However, I will say she's okay. She is okay for beginner players. She has her Void ability, which slows enemies down around her and potentially turns them into harmless Takodachis if they are defeated near her. She's got the Ancient One, which also makes harmless Takodachis. And she has what was her other ability? Oh yeah, Fourth Wa. So I would say she's actually not amazing for beginning players. Mostly because her best build is melee haste. And we've talked about haste plenty so far. But melee weapons, they're only, as of this update, when I am streaming this, there are only 3 melee weapons in the game, and 2 of them are locked at the start. So, also, one of the best items on her is Nightly Milk, which I can't remember if it's locked or unlocked at the start, but even when it's unlocked, I think it's one of the rarer items. I could actually be wrong about that. I still don't know for sure whether some items are genuinely rarer than others. So she's actually not especially great, I think, for new players. As much as I enjoy playing her. Her build doesn't really line. I mean, she does well with defensive items. There's that. But she really just doesn't... Oh, and the other thing is, I was gonna mention, the harmless Takodachis. They heal you, right? And they deal damage when you pick them up. The harmless Takodachis can actually be pretty hard to judge when you should grab them and when you shouldn't. Because a lot of the times they're in the middle of a bunch of enemies. So, you end up with a situation where, oh, I need health, I should grab some Takodachis. Or Takodachi is probably the plural of Takodachi. I don't know, I'd have to check what she says. And it's not great, I think, for newer players. So, unfortunately, I have to put Ina in C tier. Alright. Ceres Fauna. Another one of my favorite outside of the game and in-game. Fauna is... how to put this? So, I will start by saying, at some point they updated her sapling ability so that the saplings will come to you after a while, which makes her a lot easier to play for beginners. I remember the first time I played Fauna, I thought, like, wow, I really don't feel like a character until I picked up a sapling. Because she gains, I believe, and let me double check this, but I believe she gains attack and speed in addition to healing from saplings. Let me double check. Attack and speed, yes. Okay. And her build is actually pretty obvious. It's just heal as much as you like. I think the only kind of quote-unquote trap in her build is full meal, which you really don't need at any stage, I think. Her special is fantastic. You're invulnerable for like 10 seconds and you heal, which means because you're Fauna, you're also dealing damage. I think probably her worst skill as far as new players goes is Whisperer. It's very easy to lose Whisperer if you're not careful. And running around to collect saplings is something that may not come naturally, no pun intended, to a newer player. So... Oh, I will say, though, her main weapon is you don't even have to aim it. It's beautiful. So that's better. Ultimately, I think Fauna goes in the B tier for new player usability. Okay, Sakura Miko is a really interesting character. She is... How do I put this? Even as someone with as much time in this game as I have, I still am not sure exactly what to do with her. Which I guess makes her pretty good. Especially since, you know, I can still clear stages with her. But I guess that makes her pretty good for newer players. Oh, I did remember. So, there is a bit of a trap in her kit, a noob trap, if you will, where she has an ability that gives her a buff whenever she heals, but she also has an ability where if she defeats someone, I think it's just one enemy. Yeah, if she defeats a single enemy, she heals every 2 seconds. And it's a buff she keeps for 4 seconds. So really, even though she has 2 abilities that have some sort of interaction with healing, you actually don't need to build healing on her at all. Because both your buffs will be up pretty much all the time regardless. If anything, like, if you're scared of not having enough healing, you can run full meal, but, like, it's not really necessary. And really, the only thing she really wants in her build is haste, which not available at the start, but it's weird. She has a very non-specific build, and I think because of that, you can pretty much build anything on her and be relatively successful. Which is great. It's fantastic if you're new to the game. I need to figure out whether she's actually A tier or S tier. Actually, I think because of the noob trap, she goes... she might be B tier, actually. Or is that more of an intermediate trap? I don't know. I'm gonna put her in A. We'll call it the bottom of A. Because, yeah, she's got a very non-specific build, but, you know, you could be tricked into building healing, which you really don't need to. Okay, Okami Mio. So, Mio's build, unfortunately, is not one that's available from the very start. Idol costume is probably the most effective item on her. And then there's also Beetle, which probably isn't coming till super late. Because you kind of really have to go out of your way to get it. And then, aside from that, she more or less just wants to build haste. She can build defensively and do well that way. And I think that's one reason that she's actually not terrible as a starter character. But her damage might be lacking a little bit. Ultimately, I think she's probably B tier. Okay, Hoshimachi Suisei. Suisei is an interesting character. She is... well, she's crit-based for one. She has an on-crit ability, as I like to call it. Nope, I don't want to look at the picture. I want it to open up her page. Here we go. Yeah, so her axe is pretty good, actually. I think out of all the crit characters, Suisei is one of the better ones for newer players because of the guaranteed crit on the fully upgraded axe. That means, and she gets extra crit chance just for defeating enemies. So you really don't need to build a lot of crit, despite the fact that she is a crit character. You do miss out on Hope Soda early on, which is one of her... is arguably her most important item. But, like, Sake Body Pillow is plenty to get her to a decent amount of crit chance. My waifu isn't trash, you're trash. Why not both? Hello, Draft, good to see you. We're talking about Suisei right now. Because, yeah, so, yeah, all her stuff is basically crit-based, but you don't really need to build crit. So honestly, I think if you're just starting out and you want to play a crit-based character, Suisei is probably your best bet. So, A tier. Yeah, the only reason she's not an S is because she doesn't really have any defensive tools, aside from flattening enemies, which stops them from moving. And... oh wait, she does heal a little bit off of crits, but it's not a lot And her, basically, you can't get her best item until later. Okay, Takanashi Kiara. Alright, points for being in the first 5 characters that you have unlocked. Also, I probably should have gave Ina points for that, but I mean, I don't think it would change her tier. Kiara is actually, similarly to Azuki, I think Kiara is great in that she really teaches you that you should keep moving all the time, right? Dancer, her skill Dancer gives you a buff as long as you're moving. Trailblazer leaves fire under you as you move. Her special has a revive on it in addition to dealing damage and knocking people back. And then what was her other... Oh yeah, Phoenix Shield is good for just blocking damage whenever you accidentally get hit. So honestly, I think Kiara might actually be the best starting character. I think I might just actually put her right here. At the very top, because... Oh, and her main attack is relatively large. Not as big as Callie's, but relatively large. So yeah, I think that's a pretty fair spot for her to be at the very top. Also, her build, like, okay, so her optimal build is haste, or not haste, speed. But, like, she has scaling for most things aside from crit. You can build her defensively and it'll work pretty decently. So, I think she really does deserve S tier as far as beginner playability. Okay, Tokino Sora. Tokino Sora. Interesting character. Sora is interesting in that she wants... I believe she's healing based, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me pull her up. Tokino Sora. Tokino, rather. Not Tokina. Different. Tokino Sora. Yes, so... her basic attack, pretty standard. It's just a projectile. She heals, gains attack with her special. Ankimo does its own thing. It's just kind of more or less there. And sometimes immobilizes enemies. It's fine. It's another thing that you don't have to think about as you're playing her, so that's pretty solid. Alright, okay, so yes. So, she is healing based. That's probably her biggest thing. Sora actually, again, as of this current update, is the only character, the only healing based character really that cares how much she heals, because the damage she deals when she heals is based on the amount, at least partially. So that's something that I think could go unnoticed, but the thing is, if you're a new player and you see, oh, this is a healing-based character, then it should be pretty obvious when full meal pops up and says healing is doubled that you want full meal. And she also has an ability that marks enemies, which means that she wants haste, but it's not... You can still pretty easily just build healing and defense and be fine with her. I would say that, like, Ankimo and the marking ability, I believe it's... So you're the enemy? Hold on. Or you're the enemy then. That's what it's called. you're the enemy then, and Ankimo aren't, like, super obvious. This is something I've kind of been forgetting to address, how much people will actually want to take the skills. Because one thing that newer players tend to do that isn't necessarily optimal is they'll kind of ignore the skills. When, in my opinion, you should be maxing skills first. Because the only way you can level up your skills is through levels, and not through anvils or through boxes that drop from bosses. So, and there's only 3 levels to each skill, so once you only have to put 3 levels into it, and then it cycles out of the rotation. For the level up rotation, I mean. So, digressing a little bit to talk about that, honestly, I don't think she necessarily needs the other skills. I think her idle healing is kind of plenty. To just keep her alive and dealing damage, and to kind of incentivize the optimal build on her. So I am going to put her... where do we put her? I think she's okay. I would probably put her in B. Okay, Nanashi Mume. So, Mume is an interesting character, and I honestly think a relatively simple one to play. Her build, let me remind myself her abilities, because I remember that she... No, I don't want to look at the picture. Okay, oh, that's not what I wanted either. Ooh, go forward. Dang it. Sorry, I got... Oh, frick. Off there. Nope, that's not what I want either. Characters, please. Just the whole list of characters. Thank you. Okay. Nanashi Mume. Okay. Okay, so Bird Feather, her regular attack, it's pretty simple. It's just projectiles, but with the bonus that when it's awakened, it homes in on enemies. So that's pretty good. Friend is a very appealing skill. It's also pretty much, you really just don't have to think about it. It just hits things and picks things up for you, which is actually something I forgot to mention with Ankimo. Having a companion that picks things up for you is pretty useful in the beginning, because it is very easy to just leave things lying around. Let's see, damage for every target on screen, and every target defeated. Oh yeah, that's right, Mume just has a bunch of just raw damage that she gets, which is pretty darn good for as a beginner character, because you can just straight up build defensive and be fine. Optimal build for her is a little weird, actually. She actually kind of wants to build a little tanky because of Bloodthirsty, giving her, % health healing. But she also wants probably just some haste, and other than that, really, she doesn't have a whole lot of specific things that she wants to build. With that being said, is she A tier or is she S tier? A tier or S tier? Honestly, I think Mume... There's also the fact that Mume is on, the Council Plus Hope banner, which I suspect maybe being updated to the Promise banner later, but like later tonight. But we'll see. I think she's S tier because yeah, you can more or less build whatever on her and you'll be fine. Also, her special is amusing to watch people use for the first time. Yes. Mume goes in S tier. Okay. One of her gen mates, Oro Crony. Let's see. Crony. I'm thinking Crony is not very great for new players. And here's why. Crony's whole playstyle is basically built around damage avoidance. Right? She has a buff when she's at full health. And crit. And haste. All of which... The first of which isn't super obvious via her skills. Well, maybe it is, but it's not as obvious, and also damage avoidance in terms of actually just not getting hit is kind of... I mean, it's harder to do when you're newer to the game. And then crit and haste, as mentioned before, you don't really have the items to properly do that build at the start. So, Crony is actually not a great starting character. Like, Body Pillow is kind of a must on Crony, and a lot of people starting out don't really want to build Body Pillow. And Headphones. Headphones too. Well, Headphones is slightly more popular, but we're putting Crony in D tier because, yeah, she's definitely a character that benefits from a very specific build and a very specific playstyle in just not getting hit, mostly. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Tsukumo Sana. 07 for Sana. Actually, we haven't seen any other graduated VTubers yet, so yes. 07 for Sana, I didn't forget anyone else. Tsukumo Sana is, I would argue, maybe the strongest character in the game at the moment. And that is not exclusive to experienced players. I think even for new players, Sana is a very good character. You don't have to aim her main attack. Astrology just kind of gives you passive buffs that you don't need to think about, really. She's got a big, AoE burst around her that makes it pretty obvious that, like, oh, okay, you should stay relatively close to enemies but not get hit. And then Speaker of Space makes it very clear, like, hey, if you have things that increase size, like, say, Nightly Milk, take that. So, I think Sana is a very, very good character for starting the game off. I mean, you do have to play at least one round to get her, but that's probably the only drawback, I would say. Oh, yeah, and her special she makes you invulnerable, deals damage to people who touch you, and sucks in experience and coins at the end of it. That's great. I think the only downside is one of the items that is really good on her, Breastplate. You don't get until later, but I'm fully willing to put Sana in the S tier, second only to Kiara, because you don't start with Sana. But a character you do start with is Amelia Watson. So, Ame is because she's the first in the list on the character select screen, a lot of people end up starting with Ame. And I don't think that's the worst thing. I think Ame might initially seem like a bad option for a starting player, largely because her main weapon is like really small and you have to aim it. But her abilities, like Bubba picks up experience for you and stuns enemies and deals damage. Fantastic. She gets just free crit chance and free damage and haste. So, like, her damage is actually kind of crazy. And you really don't need a specific build with Ame to succeed. You can build defense. I mean, her optimal build, we're talking about optimal builds again, is crit and or haste. But, like, starting out, it's not bad. Like, it's pretty good, actually. So I think Ame goes in A tier. A for Ame. Oh, also, kind of 07 for Ame. She's technically still exists, but, like, not streaming anymore. You know. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay. Going back to characters that probably aren't as good for beginner players, Nekomata Okayu. Lovely, lovely talent. But she has a crit build. Her main attack is a projectile thrown in an arc. And like Ina, kind of like Ina, sometimes you want to run into the enemies. I guess that's more like Fubuki. But it's kind of less obvious with her when that is. Also, she has synergy with melee weapons, but again, melee weapons aren't really available at the start. Okayu's not very good for beginner players, I would argue. In fact, I would probably put her in the D tier. Probably top of D, because, you know, her whole food-based idea does pretty well at keeping you alive, but you're still not playing her nearly optimally if you don't necessarily know too much about the game, you don't have a lot of upgrades, and you don't know about her specifically and how she works. Iris. Iris is probably one of the better characters, I would say, for a new player. Iris is kind of an introduction to the food crit build, which is Body Pillow, Sake, Uber Sheep. Because she has scaling for both healing and crits. I will say her main weapon isn't particularly good until it's awakened. So, and a lot of people starting out the game will actually kind of like try to avoid maxing anything out. I don't know if they're specifically trying to avoid it, but they'll, you know, try to max. A lot of the times they're maxing things more evenly than, you know, building vertically like a more experienced player might. So honestly, Iris, her build is pretty obvious. Her special is as basic as it gets, basically. And she's, you know, she's got durability, she's got damage. She's pretty good. Not especially exciting for me to play, I think. Also, she's pretty good at farming coins. once you have stamps unlocked. You get that greed stamp, and also the super chat time. That's more of an intermediate strat, though. Okay, Gargura. Gura is interesting. You wouldn't think that the optimal build for the tiny shark girl with a trident would be tank, but it kind of is. I mean, she wants tank stats and she wants haste, actually. Haste, not very available at the beginning of the game, but tank is. I think, however, Gura, of the starting 5 characters, Gura is probably the one that suffers most from people not taking her skills. Specifically, Power of Atlantis and Shark Bite. Because that's where your damage is as Gura. And a lot of people see those abilities and they're like, whatever, you know, I don't want to necessarily max those first. In fact, Gura, what I've seen with a lot of people is they don't want to take any of Gura's skills. Which just means that, you know, she's just a slightly faster than usual character with a decent main weapon. I honestly think if you know to take her skills, she's pretty good. But otherwise, I think she's probably B tier. We'll put her next to Fauna and Mio. Okay, another 07 for Aqua. Minato Aqua is a very, very strange character. She kind of has scaling for everything. She has, like, range scaling, melee scaling, pickup range scaling, speed scaling, attack, haste, crit. And I guess that makes her pretty solid for new players. But it also makes her very confusing to people like me who are like, okay, what's the optimal build? Because yeah, I mean, she's got one ability that makes her deal more damage if nobody is near her, but makes her faster if someone is near her. One ability that gives extra crit damage if people are in her pickup range, which is a weird scaling. And then her other ability is more distance focus, is more range focus. It's multi-shot projectiles get an extra projectile but might deal less damage. So like, how do you build her? Like, this is me digressing into my own issues, but like, I mean, I'll put it this way, for new players, she's good. Just because you can build pretty much anything. Who are we talking about? Minato Aqua. That's who we just talked about. I'm putting her in A tier because you kind of can build whatever on her, and it'll kind of sort of work however. She's fine. Yeah, it's just, like, she's not a bad character in any way, it's just, I don't know how, despite how much I've played this game, I still don't know how to build her. Say B though, but low A is accurate enough? Well, I would say if this were just like a general tier list, maybe B. But this is, I should say, if you're just joining, I should add, this is specifically for a tier list for people who are just starting the game, basically. You know, newer players to the game. And I think one of the biggest things for newer players is just being able to build whatever you want on the character and be able to succeed doing that. Not having to have a very specific build to, you know, deal damage and survive and all that. good timing too. Hopefully the pre-update newbies see this. That was kind of my hope. I think a lot of people, I think we're seeing a bit of an uptick in people's interest in HoloCure, so that's kind of why I wanted to do this stream. And this whole tier list thing. And also because I'm, you know, kind of chomping at the bit to play the new update, but it doesn't come out for 4 more hours. It's fine. It's fine. I guess this might be a good time now to plug. I will probably be playing... I'll probably be streaming again later tonight when the update comes out. I have an audition to go to, like, IRL. Which is why I can't just stream all night tonight. But when I get back, I'll probably stream the update. So, and yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, that would be the... Okay, I guess that would be... No, I'm gonna post this tonight. Basically, yeah, tonight. Who needs sleep anyway? Yeah, sleep is for the weak. That's what I've been told anyway. But anyway, on to our next character. I feel like, man, can't wait to get all Gen 3s and Gen 4s to Gachikoi, right? Yes, that'll be fun. Next character, Akai Hato, or Hachima, as I usually call her. Very interesting character. I think she is pretty generalist. I think probably the biggest detriment in terms of new players playing her is the fact that her special comes up so often and you want to be using it basically every time it comes up. Newer players tend to hold their specials, so they're not really getting the full value out of their specials, but you could argue that maybe because it comes up so often that it encourages them to do it more, but honestly, I think that's probably the biggest thing, and that's kind of the whole basis of Hachima, is switching between Hato and Hachima form, so that, you know, you kind of more or less have both things up at the same time. She also wants to build haste, which again is not super available at the beginning of the game. And idol costume, which you get decently early. I think you just have to use a special, if I remember right. So, if you've got special. Also, yeah, that's one other thing. If you're somehow playing Hachima without having unlocked the special first, that's kind of really bad. Some spam it on CD while others save it for bosses. Yep. Yep. As far as specials go, yeah. So yeah, I think Hachima, because she is so special based, is not great for new players, but because, you know, she doesn't really need a specific build, I think it's not terrible. Yozora Mel, another 07. How many more do we have here? This might be the last one, actually. Yeah, okay, because we just have ID and a few JPs left. Okay, really interested on how you're gonna rank my girl Mel. Okay, so Mel. I gotta think about this one. Her build is pretty obvious, right? Her skills are pretty much all about, like, you want heal, you want lifesteal. Nurse's Horn is, if I remember right, available from the very start. Or very early, at least. And specifically says lifesteal. And her ability, I forget which one it is, that summons the bats, says, hey, when you lifesteal. So it makes it pretty obvious that, yeah, you want to build Nurse's Horn on Mel. Same thing with her gaining buffs from food. It's very obvious you want to build food, so her build is pretty dang obvious. just go on heal and steal. Yes. I think she also benefits a decent amount from haste too, just to get more bats out there. But you don't really need it. And because she heals so much, it's pretty good for, you know, players who are going to be getting hit quite a bit. Like a newer player typically is. So, frankly, I think Mel is... And she also has another one another special that makes you more or less invulnerable. I think you can still get hit by projectiles if I remember right, but... So she's pretty good. She is pretty good for newer players, I would say. It's just, if they don't catch on to the build, it's a little iffy, but... I'm gonna put her in A tier, I think. Full invincibility. Okay, cool. Okay, and that's even better, because you don't even run into projectiles until stage 3? Yeah, stage 3. So, it's not even really that relevant to this tier list. So she's probably going in A tier, probably... I would say here, between Suisei and Aqua. Just because she does suffer a little bit if you don't build her right, but it is pretty easy to figure out how to build her. And now, the bane of my wrist and thumbs. Probably, no hate to anyone, you know, who loves Matsuri, but Natsuhiro Matsuri is probably my least favorite character to play in this game. Because to use her main weapon effectively, I hate playing Matsuri, yeah. To use her main weapon effectively, you have to spin your aim. With the spin is annoying, yep. And that, I think, also contributes to part of why she wouldn't be as good for newer players, is because that's not super obvious that for optimal damage you need to spin your stick or your mouse. So, she also has a playstyle where she wants to get hit, which, as I mentioned with, you know, Fubuki and I think someone else, mostly Fubuki, isn't like super intuitive for a new player. It's very easy to get too greedy with her. Also, Just Bandage isn't available from the very start, which is arguably what she needs. Also, Paimon. Piki Paimon. She wants that too, which isn't available right away. Matsuri, you're great. Love you as a talent and as a VTuber. But I don't like you in this game, and I don't think you're very good for new players. I would argue probably, yeah, here. Okay. Aki Rose, or Aki Rosenthal specifically. Okay, what do I feel about Aki Rosenthal? Aki is interesting. She has... Here's the thing. She has healing, but the only healing in her kit is on her special. And a lot of the time, it's not... It doesn't really... Because it all happens at once, more or less, it's not very good for keeping you topped off. But on the flip side, that means, you know, if you use the special once and you understand how that it heals you, then you're likely to use it whenever you're missing a decent amount of health. So, as far as characters who encourage new players to use their special, Aki's kind of on the better side of that. Most of her other stuff is stuff you really don't have to think about. Like the Mookie Rose hitting people who are debuffed. That's not really an issue you gotta think about. If you have stamps unlocked, then that makes you kind of think like, oh, I should probably get the debuff stamps, and that makes sense. I do think Aki, a lot of her damage comes from A, Beetle, and B, Beetle and her fully upgraded main weapon, Ike. She's alright. I mean, you really gotta do is keep moving while her auto-target attacks. Right, yeah. So that's the upside, I think, for newer players on Aki, is that you really just kind of have to focus on dodging enemies while you're moving. And then the nice thing about it is because belly dancing constantly builds up as you're moving, if you stay moving, then a new player, if they get in trouble, can just stop where they are, and it's basically a get out of jail free card. So she's not bad. I would say she's probably even on the better side for newer players. Let me just see if I'm missing anything about her. Belly dancing, Mookie Rose, and aromatherapy. Yeah, aromatherapy is... it does incentivize you to get closer to enemies, but, like, it does its job regardless. I think... Oh, and talking about optimal builds and how obvious they are, not super obvious what her optimal build is. In my opinion, it's haste. Which, again, not super available at the start of the game. I think I can put her at the top of B tier. Unless... Okay, there we go. I think she goes at the top of the B tier. Because, yeah, you can more or less build whatever you want on her, but, you know, timing the special is kind of important, and it's not super obvious what you should be building on her. Okay, is this Shuba Shuba? That is Shuba Shuba. Okay, Ozora Subaru. Having never played this game, I think Glasses Girl is better. Wait, which one was Glasses Girl? Oh, Roboco. Okay, I mean, Roboco, solid. Yeah. The reason I put Roboco as far down as she is because she wants experience items, and you don't really get those until you unlock them later. And that's why Roboco is where she is. I mean, there's nobody else, right? I was thinking, like, who in the whole life wears glasses? Like, literally only Roboco. Alright. But anyway, back to Subaru. Subaru, I think, is a very good character for newer players. The handcuffs are very useful for when you accidentally get hit. In fact, that's probably what they're best for. The Duck Shout, or Duck Whisper. Duck Shout is her special. Her special is pretty simple, makes sense, knocks people back, deals damage where you're aiming. Easy enough to understand. It's solid whether you spam it or hold it for bosses. It's decent. So that's pretty good. What was I saying? Oh, Optimism. Sunny Optimism is fantastic. Having a revive for a new player is absolutely great. And the fact that she just has it in her kit, and she gets it from being hit, which, you know, a new player is going to get hit. I mean, all players are going to get hit sometimes, but new players more so. Yeah, she has defensive tools. Her damage isn't terrible. Duck Whisper, that's what I wanted to talk about, is just a pretty obvious ability. Deals damage around her. I think Subaru is pretty darn good for new players. I would probably put her at the top or bottom of S tier. Just because she might lack damage a little bit. Oh yeah, talking about Subaru's optimal build. It's weird. I forget exactly how I like to build Subaru. Let me just check the specifics of her kit, and then I can tell you. Subaru Shuba Shuba. Okay. Alright, how do I normally build Shuba? Excuse me, I don't want to see a survey, thank you. My stun. Oh yeah, I'd mostly just build her tank, which is kind of how new players build anyway. Because, you know, Optimism has tank scaling. Health scaling specifically. So, she's, yeah. I think bottom of S is good for her. This here, I believe, is Choco-sensei. Yuzuki Choco, I believe. I feel like Choco would be insane for newbies. Much like Mel, you just gotta slap on heal items and you win. I think you're kind of right. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. Heal items, crit items, that's what you want. Like, there's not a whole lot of wrong ways to build her, because haste is also good on her. I think one thing that a lot of new players tend to do is they get a lot of pickup range, which isn't great on most characters, I would argue. So if they're doing that, then that doesn't really do much for Choco. But I think you're right that the build is pretty simple, pretty obvious. She does suffer if you don't build her that way a little bit. So I could probably see putting her in A tier. Also, her special is pretty simple. Also one that kind of makes it clear that you don't necessarily always want to save your special for bosses. Because it just doesn't work on bosses. Convert enemies. She also has sustain, AoE damage, decent special, and ability to convert. Yeah. I think she's pretty good. I would probably... Honestly, I think because she has the convert and roughly this... Well, maybe not as much healing as Mel, but probably plenty. I think they should go right next to each other, really. Maybe just a little higher. Above Mel for sure due to simplicity, easier to get going. Yeah, I agree. Should she be higher than Suisei, though? Yeah, actually, I would put her higher than Suisei as well. Just because she has more durability. And for that reason, probably better than Miko, too. Ame just has way too much damage. So, I think that's where we'll end up putting them. I can agree with that, yeah. Okay. Murasaki Shion is a really interesting character. But I don't think she's great for new players. Fun, but for newbies, yeah, I agree. It is, like, even as someone who has more than 200 hours in this game, trying to, like, optimize staying within the Garlic's range while dodging enemies and aiming my shots and managing my special, and then it's playing her without Gachikoi feels miserable. Yeah, I agree. Shion is probably not great for new players. And she has some items that are particularly good for her, like Idol Costume and Breastplate, which you don't necessarily have access to early on. Beetle as well. Yeah, she's not... Like, you can build a more general build on her and be fine, but it's not... yeah, I think she goes in D tier. Let's see. But where exactly? I think probably no, better than Matsuri, I would say. Yeah, probably there. Between Okayu and Matsuri. C or D for this one? Yeah. I'm thinking definitely D. Looks like higher end of D, but yeah, it's mostly the garlic and the portals that are really hard to optimize, especially if, you know, you're not as familiar with the game. Okay, Ayame Nakiri. Very interesting character, and I think, funnily enough, if you've played Idol Showdown, Ayame has a reputation in that game for being kind of noob-friendly, and I think it's a similar case here. She gets movement speed when enemies get near, so it makes it a lot easier to dodge. Ayame is as basic as it gets, basically. She gets extra experience, which is cool, but you don't necessarily have to build experience on her. And she gets the Ayame defense field, which is a pretty good defensive tool for if you do get hit a bit and need to get out. And her special is pretty simple, it's just slash a bunch. So, yeah, I would say, as far as basic characters go, I think the only more basic one would be Azuki. But Ayame, I think, is a pretty good character. I think field-wide ult, free XP gain, haste buff, yeah. Yeah, she's pretty solid. I think the only thing that's holds her back from a higher spot would be the fact that if Ayame defense field is down, then you don't have any defenses. Except for, you know, your speed. So you really have to be able to dodge at that point. Which, I mean, isn't as much of a problem in the earlier stages. But... So, yeah, I think bottom of S. Alright. Hoshinova Muna. Another one that benefits quite a bit from very specific items. Kind of, yeah. I think Muna is another character where I think it's pretty obvious that it's best to kind of just spam her special. She wants Idol Costume, she wants Beetle, both of which you don't get right away. Idol Costume pretty early, but Beetle definitely not. And she's also got, you know, damage avoidance that she wants to build, which, again, not the best when it comes to new players. I think she's still okay, though, because, I mean, when she gets hit, yes, she loses damage, but she gains durability, so it's not as bad as just simply losing damage when you get hit. But it's still not great, I think, for newer players. I would say, I think I'm definitely putting her in C tier. But where in C is the question. I would say probably, yeah, probably at the top of C. Just because, like, other than Korone has the problem where if you don't have the right items and upgrades, you don't have a lot of damage. Muna doesn't really have that problem as much, but you do kind of want a very specific build on Muna. B or C, she's not that solid for newbies. Yeah, I would agree. So I'm putting her at the top of C. Oh boy, Ayunda Risu. A character that is very attractive for new players, I will say that. Because, hey, she gets free gold! Problem is, she has no defensive tools. Aside from her special, which isn't... It stuns them for like half a second. It's very easy to build too greedy on her. And her best build is haste. And there's the noob trap of you actually only need one coin item on her, or the greed stamp, really, to keep your copies up. So I would argue Risu is probably one of the worst characters, maybe even the worst, for new players. B or C, not that solid for newbies. Oh wait, yeah, you said that about Muna. That's right. Yeah, Risu, I think, might actually be the worst character for new players because it is so easy to greed with her. And she has no defensive tools. Well, I think, yeah. I think she's going the very bottom. Agreed. Agreed. I get it. Okay. Eophi, Irani EO15. Eophi is an interesting character. She's another one of those characters that kind of has scaling for everything. And thus you can theoretically kind of build anything on her, but it does kind of feel like she leans towards more like crit haste sort of stuff. You can build tanky and it works fine. Her special is interesting. As far as new players go with that special, yeah, I guess it's pretty obvious how it works, and maybe they won't be as good at, you know, painting a field around themselves and optimizing it, but ultimately I think Eophi is probably at least okay. Yeah, I think the biggest problem with Eophi and new players is that there's the chance that, you know, they're gonna greed for a language bubble, and that can straight up get you killed. So I think probably somewhere in B, I would say. CB, haven't dabbled much. Yeah. I would say she doesn't quite have as many defensive tools as Sora. Probably, well, Sora has a lot of healing, is what I mean. Probably bottom of B would be my placement. Okay, speaking of characters who are really easy to greed with, Crazy Ollie. Ollie is really solid. Ollie is interesting, right? Because you've got the merch, which hurts you, but it buffs you. So, pretty obvious how that works, regardless of, you know, how much you've played the game. You have a revive. A revive is really useful. Like I said when we were talking about Subaru, a revive is really useful for new players. The max HP reduction afterward is a little... and then let me remind myself what her other skill is. What was her special again? I need to pull her up now. Crazy Ollie. Okay. Oh, Zombie Ninjutsu. Okay, so that's right. Railgun, that's right. The charge rifle. Yep, I remember now. Charge rifle is not super intuitive, I think. But it's fine. But Zombie Ninjutsu, I have because unlike belly dancing on Aki, they work similar, but the difference between Zombie Ninjutsu and belly dancing is that Zombie Ninjutsu has a bar with different sections on it. So, and depending on what section you're in, you get a different attack. Zombie Ninjutsu scales really well and is easy to build up the lighting. It is easy to build up the lighting, but what I'm saying is that I think newer players a lot of the time won't wait for the lightning. They'll just use whichever ability is available when they feel like using the ability. So I think it's good, but it's not as good as belly dancing. Fair enough, yeah. And yeah, there is a chance that, you know, after the revive, you're not playing carefully enough, and because you have less max HP, you just end up getting caught by surprise and dying. So, I can see him just spamming fire. Yeah. Yep. Let's see. So where do we put you? I think maybe... Oh yeah, Ollie's build. Ollie's build is also not super weird. You'd think that on a character where you lose health, you wouldn't want to build health, but you do want to build health. I think the revive alone warrants at least a B. I think you're right. I think it is probably B. But I do think it's really easy to get revived and then, you know, get caught off guard and die because you now have less health than you did before. All right, who we got here? Why don't I recognize this character? Hold on. Rainy, that's right. Right, Papiola Rainy. Another very attractive character for newcomers, because another character that just gets free money. I think the biggest difference between Rainy and Risu in that regard is the fact that Rainy is kind of easier to maintain. Well, I don't know if that's true. Actually, I think it's kind of the opposite, where Rainy does actually need the greed items, kind of, which aren't unlocked at the very start, so that's worth noting. And she's also got crit scaling, which is, again, not something you have a lot of access to at the start. Let me see, what else am I missing? Let's see. Gain crit for each target. She does get free crit, so that's solid. And yeah, she's very much crit based. Crit and greed, which those items you don't really get much of. I think the fact that she has kind of more damage without items than Risu does puts her above Risu. And I think just overall, here's one thing actually about Rainy. I think it's very easy for a new player to hit the special button and then not know what happened. And even once they've hit it again once, they might not realize that they still have 4 more punches that they can use. So her special is kind of hard to use. I think she has enough damage, ultimately, that she doesn't have to worry as much about just getting destroyed out of nowhere. And there's nothing in her kit that's like... it feels like, you know, a noob trap. So I think probably bottom of C is where I would put her. Okay, Anya Melfisa. Anya, again, another very interesting character. My favorite item on Anya is Breastplate, because I like building Breastplate on any character that has invulnerability, basically. But Anya specifically, when she's using her special, that's just more damage as you're running people over. Unfortunately, Breastplate not available super early. What else does she have? She's also very much melee based, which is kind of a problem. She has a buff that goes away when you get hit, so For newbies, I'd say she's great because of her sleep. The sleep is good, but the problem is, maybe this is more of a problem for intermediate players, but I think the problem with Anya's sleep is that people get it in their heads that, like, oh, I need to stop moving to use this, aren't I going to get hit? So I think using the sleep effectively, it's something you kind of have to... It's better than you think it is what I'm saying. I think at first glance, it doesn't look like a great ability when it actually is. So I think people are often going to be hesitant to actually use it. Or even take the skill point, because, as mentioned before, newer players don't tend to max skills first. Yeah, ultimately, the unfortunate thing... So, basically what she wants to build is melee and tank, more or less. And I don't think... The tank part's good, but the melee part for new players isn't great. Certainly takes a while to learn to manage it effectively. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, skills-wise, I don't think she's super noob-friendly. I think ultimately, I mean, the invulnerability special is points. You know, it's big ups for that. And the sleep is good if you know how to use it. But for new players, I think maybe top of C. No, above Munna, please. Thank you. Yeah. It's very hard to efficiently build and use Anya if you don't really know what you're doing. Totally not Gargumba, yes. Kobo Kanaru, our precious winning son. Kobo is a really interesting character. I think Kobo is another character that's very effective with a certain build. And that's mostly with body pillow and headphones, which you can get at the very start. But I don't know that it's super obvious that you should build it when it comes to people just starting the game. Her special's great. Slowing everyone down and just dealing damage over time, that's fantastic. And speeding you up as well. It's good. Let's see. What else does she have again? Right, okay, so yeah, gets a buff when being attacked, gets a buff when not taking damage or for healing. And then the rain clouds just kind of do their own thing. You don't really have to think about them too much. Free damage via rain, tantrum, praise bar is simple enough, and damage sustained. Yeah, I think probably the trap that a new player might fall into on Kobo, though, is that because they see the damage and praise thing, or the tantrum praise thing, and they're like, oh, okay, this is good, you know, one way or the other, necessarily. Like, this is good, it's good if I get hit, and it's good if I don't get hit, kinda, sorta. They don't see the world where you can have both. Because the phrasing, you kind of have to read into the phrasing to realize that tantrum procs on attack, not on damage taken, and praise is reduced on damage taken. So if you're attacked but you don't take damage, then you're basically optimizing both those abilities. But I don't think I think you really have to read into how the game works to realize that. But that being said, you don't necessarily have to optimize that. I think Kobo's solid for new players, probably going in B tier. Let's see. Okay, we're in B tier, though. Definitely safer than Ollie. Oh yeah, build-wise, you want to build tanky, people build tanky anyway at the start. Newbies definitely won't be able to notice the similar nuances in Kobo's kit. Yeah. Yeah, the nuances are a little bit harder to grasp with Kobo. Sora... I'd probably put her above Sora, mostly because of her special. She doesn't have as specific a build as Mio. She's... probably put her above Gura. Maybe between Gura and Fauna. Because, yeah, Fauna has a very obvious what you want to build. Kobo is not as obvious. Higher than Goomba is fair? Yeah. Yeah, the main reason I have Goomba where she is because a lot of people don't take her damage skills. This is one thing I've noticed from watching people play. A lot of people won't take Shark Bite and Power of Atlantis, or at least they won't max them out as soon as they should. So they tend to end up lacking damage, which Kobo I don't think you have that problem with. Okay, probably my favorite character in this game, as of this update, Kaela Kowalskia. I love this character, because you can kind of just ignore the enemies and just play Minecraft. Yeah, that being said, Minecraft the character, absolutely. As for new players, I don't know. I think for new players, it would be pretty easy for them to get distracted too much by, you know, mining ore. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's some sort of benefit to do it. Build-wise, it's pretty, like, credit card is kind of a must, and blacksmith gear. Yeah, I'm torn. It's either the hyper focus or on ore or not mine at all. Yeah, I feel like for a new player, it'd be very easy to just not handle that efficiently. Build-wise, you want credit card and blacksmith gear, definitely, so you can get a butt ton of upgrades. And that's the thing, that's one thing specifically with Kaela, is because you get so many levels on your items and weapons, she's really good for collabs. But new players aren't gonna know collabs very well. They might not even know collabs exist, depending on, you know, whether they're coming from, like, a Survivors like that doesn't have that sort of thing in it. So, while I would say Kaela is pretty good, let alone super collabs, yes, I think Kaela benefits quite a bit from super collabs, which is at least an intermediate thing. So I really do like Kaela, but I think it's very easy to play her inefficiently, and some of the items she wants aren't available right away. So, I mean, the anvils are free damage, which is nice, the falling anvils. And the mining can be done relatively easy. It's not the hardest thing to figure out, but... oh, no pressure is good, though. We like no pressure. That's just automatic damage around you. That's fantastic. And slowing. That's great. So I would probably put Ella in B tier. Lowish B? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Ooh, that is one thing. She doesn't really have any sort of defensive options aside from no pressure. No pressure is usually good enough, but she doesn't have any like healing or damage reduction or anything like that. Probably put her below Sora and above Eophi. Alright, and now for our final character, Vestia Zeta. I think Zeta is pretty solid for new people, mostly because invulnerability. She gets it all the time. She gets free crit, which is nice. I think it is relatively easy to not optimize her invulnerability because, you know, you get extra crit and or damage, I don't remember exactly which, when you're invisible. It is pretty extra damage. Okay, yeah. It's pretty easy not to optimize that, especially if you're worried about getting hit like a new player is going to be. But, like, getting extra damage when you accidentally get hit isn't the worst thing either. Crit items, not super available at the beginning, but that's kind of okay because she gets free crit anyway. Let's see, what else? Oh, also she has experience scaling, which is also another thing that doesn't show up right away. Her ult, being a time stop, essentially is great. Yes, that is true as well. That's a very good, like, get me out of here kind of ult. Having invulnerability and time stop and extra damage. That's pretty good. So ultimately, I think Zeta is pretty good. I would probably put her... Only problem with her that she's not the most fun to pilot. That's true. Yeah, it's a little awkward to pilot her. Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm probably putting her in B. She's a little more involved, I think, than Aki. As far as Roboco goes, she has more defensive tools than Roboco. Yeah, probably high B. Dang, how to make that many typos. It happens. Okay. And so with that, I think this is our tier list. I don't want to scroll up too much. Okay. Yeah, and that's as of the version 0.6.9.11. Whatever. The version right before version 7. 0.7, I should say. Yeah, I'm just looking over this to see, like, if I would change anything. I think I'm pretty happy with it where everyone is. Yeah. So, for anyone out there who's watching and looking to get into HoloCure, here are basically my recommendations for who to start with. Kiara's probably your best bet. After your first or second run, Sana's good. Azuki, feel free to build just about anything on her. And she's very simple to play. Mume gets a ton of damage. You can build whatever you like on her. Her special is hilarious to watch people use. It's not really a playing her thing, that's more of a watching other people thing. But Subaru has a free revive. That's cool. As well as just arresting people constantly. And Ayame, once again, basic, but unlike Azuki, she's melee. So, start with one of these, I would say. One of these 6. Or, you know, the A tier ones are pretty solid too. And with that, I think I will probably have to call this stream to a close. As mentioned before, I have places to be tonight. So, let's maybe we can find someone to raid. Perhaps. Yeah. Let's look for a raid target. Alright, I saved up the question for the end. What's up with Bale's placement? I feel like if anyone just stocks up on decent base weapons, they can straight up one-shot bosses. Almost a perfect bell curve. Well done. Thank you. So Bae. The reason Bae is so far down, she has pretty much no defensive items. or defensive options. Defensive skills, I should say. She's really good against bosses, but I feel like bosses aren't usually what kill new players. New players die to getting overwhelmed, I think. So she has basically no defensive scaling in any way, no defensive skills. And a lot of her damage is based on specifically building crits. Forgot that newbies have no speed, Lamau. Yeah. Yeah, it's very easy for them to get caught and just absolutely get shreked. Yeah, that's why Bae is as far down as she is. As, you know, for intermediate to expert players, I think Bae is pretty darn good. But for newer players, not so much. Alright, let's find someone to raid. Kind of thinking maybe. Is there anyone in my following that is playing HoloCure? Don't mind me just kind of ducking around things. Just chatting, Let's see. You know what? You know who's been playing? Actually, one person who's kind of inspired me to do this. Hopefully I can actually raid them. Because they started playing HoloCure recently. They're not playing it right now, but... wait, no. I need my following. There we go. Can I raid? I would like to raid. Yes, it worked. Okay. So let's go say hi to Mr. Jesse Cox. I used to watch him all the time on the Co-optional podcast. And he's recently started playing HoloCure, so... He was kind of one of the people where I was like, you know, this guy could maybe use something like this. Alright. Yeah. So, if you're watching, thank you for watching. And as for this stream, that's a wrap.